Hello there. How's it going? I'm just I'm trying a slightly new um kind of transition between the pre-show and the actual video, and I just wanted to make sure it was working, and it did. So that's good. I just trying to avoid feedback here. So let me check, make sure I have everything as I am going to, wait, all right. So today I wanted to do kind of the main topic is about Siril and the Seestar scripts, the new Seestar script. There was kind of a previous script for doing the pre-processing phase of anyway. Rewind. The Siril workflow, you end up processing your frames through a pre-processing script, and there was a script that was available that you had to download for Siril that didn't require the calibration frames, and I used that a lot. But then more recently, a new script came out from the author of Siril, or one of the authors of Siril, the main author, and it does a couple of extra things. And so I thought I'd talk about that and see what differences there are, and what the impact is. Anyway, I'll get to that in a moment. But first, I just kind of wanted to do a little sorry, wrong window here. Kind of a little preview, not a preview, but just kind of a teaser. I'm currently finishing up a Siril related video, Seestar and Siril related video that'll be coming out soon. I've been saying that for a while, I know. But after that, I'm planning on coming out with a video, or releasing a video, which I've already kind of started pre-production on, about a all sky camera, which I'll kind of go into it in the video, but it's what it sounds like. It's basically a camera that captures, that takes photos of the sky, the entire sky, and it does time lapses and some other kinds of neat things. Well, All Sky Camera is kind of a generic thing, but then there's also a project called All Sky, and that's the software that I'm going to be running. It runs on Raspberry Pi, which is what this is, and a Raspberry Pi camera. It also runs on like ZWO cameras, if you have one of the certain models of ZWO camera. And anyway, I'll be releasing a video about that, so stay tuned for that. It's kind of an interesting thing, and it kind of, as I think I alluded to in the previous stream, and like in a community post, it kind of has grown out of my frustration with all the cloudy weather we've had recently here, and not just cloudy, but kind of it'll be sunny and then it'll be cloudy. Well, not sunny. It'll be clear and cloudy on and off throughout the evening, which makes it difficult to kind of know when to start taking photos, because I can start the process with a telescope, but it won't, like, it'll just reject all the frames and stuff won't work. But anyway, this is an upcoming project, and they're not that expensive to build. Commercial ones can be kind of more expensive, a lot more expensive. And then in this envelope, this mystery envelope, I have an even more that'll actually be the second part of the project. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, let me look. So let's get to the substance of what I was going to discuss. So let me switch back to my primary. So there's the Seestar itself, the Seestar telescope itself will stack. It'll take a series of photos, stack them, and it'll give you a reasonable first pass, a reasonable result. But as I've mentioned many times before, if you want extra control, you have to process the files outside of the Seestar. And the pre-processing stage, which involves taking all the individual sub-exposures, so all these 10-second exposures that comes out of the Seestar, the pre-processing stage involves kind of converting them into a standard format and then aligning them and stacking them. And so it just kind of combines them all into a single image, perhaps like filtering out ones that aren't ideal, either ones that like if a cloud, like one of the things it does for aligning is it looks at stars, like the number of stars in the image, and tries to match them. And so if a cloud goes over, or just it gets a little, if the seeing conditions get worse, if the sky gets fuzzier, the script will not be able to, for a given frame, it won't be able to detect the stars, or it'll drop below a threshold and it'll just not include it in the final stack. Now, that said, you can still end up with a lot of bad frames included in the stack, but still, if most of your frames are good, or if they're all reasonable, the automatic scripts are great. But there are limits. But anyway, let's get into the result, or kind of the substance of it. So first thing I'm going to do is, the script I'm referring to is, okay. The script I'm referring to is, like I say, it's available from Siril. They have an article, or they mention the script, and there's like a brief tutorial on it, and it tells you how to put the script in the directory and stuff. So let's get to the result. So this right here is kind of the out of telescope result. And I'm kind of going back to like an old standby, Orion, the Orion Nebula, even though it's not really a good target now this time of year, just because I had a lot of good data from it. And it kind of allowed me to do, I've done some other tests, which I'll get to in a little bit, but I wanted to start with M42 because this was actually the first thing I ran through the new script, like a few weeks ago. It was right around the time of the solar eclipse, so I wasn't able to like really talk about it much because I was kind of preoccupied. But this is just the default out of telescope image, and it's not too bad. It's a 42-minute, as you can see in the bottom, it's a 42-minute exposure. So I took the photo, and then I ran it through. So I'll tell you what I did. I took all the 42 minutes worth of sub exposures, and I ran them through Siril using a script, using the two scripts, both the old kind of OSC script and the new one. And I then processed each one just by picking the default kind of the default stretch, not using kind of the manuals, doing it manually using the general GHS. And then I saved it out. I basically, so you can see like this image has, even compared to the one that was out of telescope, it's got a lot of artifacts kind of at the edge, and it's got some noise here. But I did that mostly because I wanted to I didn't want to introduce, I didn't want to process the two images, or I didn't want to run it through two different scripts in Siril and then have slight differences in the processing stage of, doing all the additional work, because then it's kind of hard to tell what is different. Anyway, so that's the motivation. So here, so you can see, if you like, I want to kind of bring your attention to the framing of this photo, specifically kind of like around the edges here. So you can see that between the default one from the Seestar itself and just kind of the old stacking script, you have these stars, and kind of this nebulosity is kind of, it's in the same position. You can tell the framing looks very, very similar. And the same thing on this side. You compare like the bright stars along the edge, and they're the same on each side. So the framing looks to be pretty much almost identical. Now there are some subtle differences here, like you can see like there's a star here that's slightly out of frame over here, so that it might be, maybe slightly rotated, the two from the process, the two that the default versus kind of, or the default from the Seestar, and then the default script, or the old script. So let's look at the new script. So I'm going to just move this over here. And so, well, take a step back. The other thing you notice, besides the fact the framing is almost identical between the default from the telescope and the old script, this brought out a lot more. It's a lot brighter of an image, and you have like more extended nebulosity. I mean, it's the exact same underlying data, but you can see stuff here that isn't visible here. So this is why it's worth processing it yourself, because you can bring out details that maybe the Seestar itself did not show you in the default stack, but that is in the underlying data. So that said, one thing that's immediately struck me about this one on the right is the new script, the Siril specific, or the Seestar specific Siril script. I keep doing that. You still have kind of the extended nebulosity, but the one thing that immediately struck me about these two, and remember, like I say, I did no cropping or anything. One thing that immediately struck me is you can see a lot more of the Running Man up here. Like it's like the framing is different. It's rotated more, and like it actually, I was trying to figure out if it was purely rotation. Yeah, it's purely rotation, I think, because if you look at like these stars here, that's these here. So like this star is out of frame, this star is out of frame. But the other thing that kind of that immediately struck me is the noise. Like these artifacts right here are a lot less in this one. And that is because I'll get to it in when we look at actually the scripts themselves. But that's they're related. Like the fact that the framing is different with the new script versus the old script. And one of the reasons why you have these artifacts to begin with is because since the Seestar is not an equatorial telescope by default, it just goes up, down, side to side, but stars and other objects in the sky kind of trace curves in the sky. So, or they rotate. And so as a result, the Seestar, it tries to compensate for it. It matches it, but around the edges, because as the target is being imaged, it's kind of rotating in the field of view. And so stuff around the edge, it tries to crop out some of it, but some of it keeps. And that's where you get kind of these noisy artifacts, because there isn't as much, like in the center, maybe there was the full 42 minutes worth of data, but at this edge, there may have only been a few minutes of data before it kind of rotated out of the field of view. But with this one, it seems like especially on this lower left side, you see a huge difference in the noise around. But you can make the argument that it appears that it's like more balanced, and that would probably actually be right. But we'll get to that, like I say, in a moment. But, and like the same story is up here, where like there's a lot more noise stacking artifacts up here with the old script, whereas here, it seems kind of, there's less, but then there's also a little bit more over here. But you see a whole lot more of this. And I'll go right into why that is, in case you hadn't guessed. I may be missing some things, but if I am, please, if you're watching this live, let me know. And if you're watching this afterwards, add a comment. But I kind of looked at the two scripts, and this is if you're not used to looking at scripts, it may seem kind of like, strange, but it's all relatively straightforward. It basically says, this is the old script on the left, and this is the new script on the right. It basically says, go to the lights directory, convert the lights into a process directory, change directory to the process directory, then pre-process them with the debear switch, which if you looked at one of my videos where I kind of go into the manually pre-processing things, let me increase the size of the font a little bit. It's always one of my pet peeves when I'm looking at text on a screen. Anyway, it basically pre-processes, registers, and then stacks. That's the old script. Now this one, okay, it does the convert, and then it does it, because this one will run on even very old versions of Siril. This is only for more recent versions. And they added more features in some of the newer versions. Again, you don't need to worry about it, but it just kind of, most of this stuff, it's like some of the commands have kind of been split out and stuff, but otherwise it's similar. You have, instead of pre-process, you have, anyway. But look at this register here versus this register here, this 2-pass, and then the seek apply. So otherwise, a lot of the other stuff is like the stack is pretty similar. Yeah. So these two lines are probably two of the more significant lines right here. Basically the 2-pass means when it's kind of looking at all the frames and lining them up, apparently the Seestar, which it makes sense because the Seestar is kind of doing it dynamically. It's live stacking it. So as you're watching the Seestar screen on your app, you'll see it kind of building up the exposure. It basically picks the first frame, the Seestar, and this script on the left. It basically picks the first frame in the series and uses that to stack, to align all the images and then stack them. But remember, because the field is rotating, that's probably not the ideal frame to pick. It's probably one of the ones towards the middle of your session. So if you are recording for an hour, you don't want to pick the one at the first minute. You want to pick one at like around the 30th minute. Well, it's not necessarily doing exactly that, but that's part of what 2Pass does, is it tries to find, it goes through, it takes a little longer, not that much, because these frames are relatively small. It goes through and it checks all of them and then picks the frame that has the best match with the other frames, more or less, I think. And so to me, that would seem like it would probably end up picking a frame near kind of the middle, which would tend to reduce the rotation artifacts on, or it would kind of more evenly distribute the rotation artifacts, because instead of picking one at the beginning and then everything kind of rotates, you're picking one in the middle, and then it's, you know, there's rotation artifacts on all four corners, but they're smaller. And so that, I believe, that is probably one of the more significant things that would change this framing. Now, the second part of this, of the script difference that you see, it's got this additional command, this set EQ, apply rag. You don't have to worry about that. But this filter round, basically, some people have noted that, and I've noticed it in some conditions too, or maybe it was with one of my Seestars and not the other, but the stars, it's not that it's out of focus, but sometimes the stars seem a little oblong. And I don't know if it's because of, it didn't seem like it was purely because of the way the mount works and like the alt azimuth, but I think it might be, anyway, I'm not going to speculate, but that line there helps filter out more round stars, or stars that aren't as round. And so the final stack, it might not be as bright because maybe you're filtering out more frames, but they should end up with like rounder stars. And if you see here, it even has a note in the script. If you find too many images are discarded, you can increase the value. But basically that's part of the difference. And then kind of the two other differences. One is this mirror X single. It flips the image, because sometimes it ends up like, you know, not in the orientation you would expect it. And so this does that in the script. And it also, instead of saving it just as a file called like result.fit, it actually saves it as like the object name and the number of frames in it. So you can see that in, let me see if I can pull this up. You can see it in, let me pull this up. You can see the script, like the old one, the old script was, the result was just called like result.fit. But then this one, it actually, well, I added some stuff, but without the stretched part, it has the M42, 205 frames, 10 seconds. And then, yeah, the date of when it was, when the data was taken. So yeah, that's the difference. Now, one thing I've noticed, because I've started using this script by default for all of my Seestar photos for the pre-processing stage. One thing I've noticed is I've had some. I haven't looked into it to see if it was the two pass part or if it was the filter round part, but I've had some targets where it ended up filtering out so much. It ended up filtering out so much that it was a complete failure, like to even pre-process. So I went to pre-process and nothing happened. Let me see. Hold on a second. I just noticed something here. Hold on, something. Sorry about that. Please bear with me. I'm having technical difficulties. Okay. There's method to my madness. The thing I have for the on-screen overlays died, but the reason I did that is I wanted to bring this comment on. I've seen a frame and a capture I did to firmware where the stars look like, little comets. I've had some weird glitches like that as well. I've had it where the problem is my seeing situation in the backyard is very constrained. I say it probably every time, but basically the sky, I have a very narrow window straight up where I can see things. So I don't get to observe a specific target for too long. And a lot of times things end up near the zenith straight overhead where it ends up, the Seestar has a problem like pointing at things almost straight up. And so I haven't been able to spend as much time trying to troubleshoot it, but I've had issues like that where I point things at, I go to a target and it just immediately starts failing every frame. It doesn't even get a single frame. And every one of them looks like they're stretched or they're a little oblong. And it seems like the telescope is having a hard, like it's in a weird mode where it's not tracking. And it's like it's a software issue. And so what I'll do is I'll stop and sometimes I'll go to another target or I'll just restart it. But a lot of times when I'll stop it when it's recording and I just look at the live preview, I'll see the stars like drifting, like it's not tracking properly. And so I've also had it where it would take photos and they would, or I would start a session and it was taking frames, but they were oblong. So that, assuming you don't have that many of those kind of frames, this new script should filter out a lot of the oblong frames. But like it says in the script, if you have, if you find too many images that are discarded, you may have to adjust this number. Or you can go in, I mean, some of it is stuff you can do kind of in Siril itself. Let let me pull up Siril here. But yeah, it's kind of let me see. Come on. Trying to resize this thing down before I bring it on screen. But yeah, if you bring up the, what do you call it? So some of these options are like in the registration, manual registration. Does that allow you to do the filtering here? Or do you have to, maybe you end up having to yeah, I mean, I've had issues where like here with the registration where it'll end up having a hard time having a hard time finding matches across the stars or across the frames. And I mean, for me, a lot of times it's because I'm trying to take a photo of something. I have bad light pollution. The seeing is bad, and there'll be like a full moon, and I'm looking at a target that's faint, and there's very few stars that are visible within that frame that are bright enough for Siril to be able to align them. And so I've been running into this a few times. Like I say, there's other things that are making it worse, namely like full moon and heavy light pollution. But like when I was taking photos of some of the globular clusters and galaxies, I was having a problem where sometimes the Seestar itself actually was having an issue, even like taking photos of a given target. But then sometimes when it was able to get a bunch of exposures, I'd pull them into Siril, and Siril would say, I can't, there's not enough stars between frames for me to even figure out how to align them. But it'll say in this, it'll produce output in the console here when it's stacking it through, or when it's processing it through the pre-processing script. And so I went in and like made an adjustment to the script. So you can see pre-processing 5 stars. I basically made a copy of the script for these kind of situations. Just there might be a better way of doing it, but basically I when there were only 5 stars, the default is like 8 or 9, 8 or 10, something like that. But I had to drop it to 5 in some situations. And there was actually another time where, actually, now that I think about it, those little comet like things, it was having a hard time registering and stacking things because there were a number of stars like that. The stars were faint, but I had some galaxies, so I actually increased some tiny galaxies were in the frame, and so I actually adjusted the kind of manual stacking to be able to like lock onto the galaxies and use those to help align. But they were tiny galaxies. So anyway, speaking of which, well, I already kind of went into that. I've with this new script, I have run into issues. But like I said, I don't know if it was because of the oblong star issue or something else, but it was with, I don't know if it was with the globular clusters, but it was definitely, I think, with the galaxy, with like the Leo triplet. I had some issues where the new script refused to do anything, or it tried, and then it said, I can't figure out which exposure is the best one to register everything around. So yeah, that's kind of it. I'm not sure. I was debating doing kind of like a live stacking version of this, but I don't think I will. You kind of get the idea. The um, that now, so I was kind of down on the fact that I've had these failures, but to be honest, I've been using this script by default. Like this is the first thing I've been using, or I always try to use this first. Mostly because since it does the second pass and it filters out the oblong stars and it does the auto flip, and I like that it names the output with the number of frames that it processed. I like that, and the target name, so you don't have like 100 different result.fit files. It's nice that you have like ones based on the target. I mean, you can always rename things, but the fact it does it for you is nice. And I do feel like the framing, the fact that it does this 2-pass registration, I feel it is nice, because then you end up with having to crop out kind of less, or you can kind of push it a little bit more into the edges, or sometimes I don't even crop at all, or just the smallest crop on the sides. So it's definitely worth it. I think it does produce a higher quality, an image with more usable data, because it's like not as bad noise on the sides, and it's discarding the oblong images. So yeah, I'd say it's worth it. It's worth using. That said, just be aware that it does have, it can struggle with some data sets, but maybe that's just me living in a heavily light polluted area. But there will be some more, I'm sure they'll have more updates with it, and Siril's continuing to add new functionality. So, I know it's just, it'll get better and better. That said, a lot of times that noise, like these photos I have here, hold on. Where's my preview? There it is. Sometimes you just, like this noise here. Actually, that might be something. I should try that. This is one thing. That's one thing I can do on stream. I had thought about doing it, but I'll do it. Basically, I'm going to just quickly run these photos through GraXpert just to see how they look and see what it does to clean it up. Okay. It's because I haven't actually run these through GraXpert. Now that said, then it doesn't become quite an apples to apples comparison with the original. But we can use it to kind of compare the two different scripts. I did look just last night to see if there was an updated noise reduction model with GraXpert. This is the 2.0 model. If one came out since last night, I'm not using it right at the moment. So it's thinking about it, and I'm going to save it out, and then, so here it is, denoised. Oops. And here's the original. Oh, wow. Yeah, nice. Okay, so we're going to save that. Oops, I don't want to save it as a fit file. Not today. I'm going to save it as, oh, I guess I have to, I'll save it as a fit file. And then let's load up the other one. And the Seestar script, fit file. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's why. Yeah. Yeah. I've flipped the images, the PNGs, so that they were kind of the same alignment. But remember, I said all I did was I processed them. I just did a stretch of the fit file and then saved it out. Whereas that script will do that flip. So that's why it's like slightly different. Oh, let's look at this. Original. Okay, fine. That looks good. Save it. Save it. Now let's bring up Siril. Open it. Nope. Oh. There. D7. Demo. We're getting there. And I just want to save it as a PNG just for grins. Mostly so I can, wait. Mostly so I can bring it up in preview and we can put them all side to side more easily. Now, if you have something fancy like PixInsight, you can load up all those in PixInsight, but I don't do it that way. Okay, save it. Set it to PNG, save. Okay, and let's go look at that, and let's quickly pull that up. So wait, did I not save that? Oh. Well, let's pull this up. Did I not? Sorry, this is my bad. Basically, because I'm not going to try to find those files. Oh, that's where they are. because Siril has that concept of the home directory, it was still pointing at a different directory. So I just need to go pull up that directory and grab the files real quickly. Let's see, demo. Okay, demo. It was M101. I was processing some stuff related to M101. Okay, so here is the so let me flip this. Flip vertical. So here is the version of the default script with denoising through GraXpert. And then let me pull up the version with the new script also run through. So here's the version that's run just through the new Seestar specific Siril script, and here it is denoised. So yeah, I mean that looks pretty nice, honestly. I think, considering I spent very little time, I just basically ran it through the scripts. I mean, all three of them are nice, but I do like the framing, as I said. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, it cleaned up some of the noise along the edge, but there's only so much it could do on the old script. Whereas on the new script, it didn't have that much noise along the edge to begin with, because it's smaller. And so this is, yeah, a much nicer result, I think. So yeah, this is why I've been kind of using this script by default. Yeah, for all of my processing. Let's see what else. I think that is it. Yeah, if you please like and subscribe, and if you want to support what I do, there's details in the description. So keep an eye out for the video I'll be coming out with later this week, and or this weekend, and then the all sky camera video. And I think with that, clear skies, and hopefully your skies are clearer than mine have been recently. But that's all I have for now. So thanks for joining. Of course, did that work?